Our son Jason started off by going on the UK trials tour. That was a fantastic experience. He went to Manchester United, Everton, Stoke. A wonderful, wonderful experience. Visited Liverpool's academy, which was fantastic. Gave him the taste for football. He understood that it wasn't all about ability, it was more about attitude. And he learnt a lot on that tour. Came back to Australia, spent another 6 months with George. Then George sent him off to Cyprus. He spent 6 weeks in Cyprus, so that was a country where they didn't speak a lot of English, obviously. So he learned some life skills, which was great. Then from there, about 6 months later, he went off to the Dallas Cup in the US. Had a great experience there. Spent 2.5 weeks playing against some of the best young players in the world, and it was a world-class tournament. Came back, then he went across to the UK to FAB, which is an academy in Marlow, where the English Institute of Sport is. He spent 18 months there. Part of that trip he spent 4 weeks at Leicester City. So that was a great experience, trialling there and getting some football education. So he's had, he's basically the last 3.5, 4 years, he's probably spent 2.5 years overseas. So it's been a great experience. George knows every child. So you're not just a number. You're part of his family. So it's almost like an extended family for George. He's almost like an uncle. Sounds funny, but to all the kids. But he knows them all by name, treats them as a family member, understands all their strengths and weaknesses, and no child's too difficult for George. It takes a hell of a lot for George to ask a child to move on. So, but don't expect that your son or daughter will develop straight away. It's a long journey. You've got to be on the journey. And from my experience now, I think as a young footballer, if you have that dream, 18, 19, that's about the right age. These kids that are stars at 14 and 15 tend to die out. They don't sustain it. It's all about attitude. They've all got ability. If they get their attitude right, ability can be coached and moulded. And I think that's my best advice. In fact, I shouldn't say, firstly, it was excellent value for money. I mean, George probably understates his pricing, to be fair. So he's the experience the kids get, especially on the overseas tours, you could probably charge $2,000-3,000 more and still justify it. So the justification of price, I think probably George is too generous at times. Going on a tour to the UK, watching the English kids and doing comparisons as to where they're at compared to where the Australian kids were, I think Jason's biggest feel was that up to about 14 or 15, the Australian kids are as good as the English kids, but from 15 to 17 is where the English kids excel, work harder, better attitude, and the Australian kids tend to drop off. So for him, the biggest learning curve was to focus more in that area. Also, I think realising that you need to go to the gym. It wasn't just great to be a reasonable player. Physically, you need it because the English kids are big kids, they're strong, and they work out at the gym and set routines. So the gym became that was probably his biggest thing, I would have thought. Jason's been non-stop with George probably for the 5 years now. So he's experienced probably all stages of the academy. So he's been on tour, come back and done the 40-week clinic. Then he's moved on to the full-time thing as a student with George. So he's in the first group of kids that did that. And now he's back over in the UK with one of George's scouts, and he's living there and has an opportunity probably to go with a conference team. So the experience is all the way through. And George always keeps in constant contact with him, inspires him, motivates him. It's good. Jason was attending NEOF. George asked Jason if he'd like to go back to the UK for an opportunity. George organised the opportunity with Billy Stewart at the barn. Jason arrived there. George had arranged for him to be transported to the barn. So all his accommodation was taken care of. George had also given Jason a fairly strict guidance on what to do and what not to do. Under George's tutelage, Jason's developed from being just a park player into probably a pretty reasonable player. Also, what George has managed to do with Jason is develop his mind, to get his mind on the job. So certainly today, Jason's now trialling with conference clubs in the UK, so he'll become a professional and make a living out of the game. And there's no doubt, without George's guidance, Jason would not have gone this far.